Welcome to 2 Hours No Traffic, a New York, Philadelphia sports podcast. I am your host, Ben Harris, joined always by my co-host, Brandon Farron. Philly Brandon, they call him out in the streets. Probably
the streets.
What'd you call him? The mean
The
streets?
mean streets.
You ever see that movie?
No.
De Niro's in it. Scorsese directed it. Harvey Keitel. Great movie. And also Richie Aprile from The Sopranos is in it. I'm trying to sort of divert my mind into places where I can go and feel something good talking about The Sopranos. Maybe I'll bring up some food that I ate recently in this podcast. Because from a sports perspective, Philly Brandon, as a diehard Brooklyn Nets fan, this is one of the worst days, I think, in the last 3 years since we acquired Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving all those summers ago. This is easily probably one of the worst days to be a Nets fan in a long time.
Yeah. The empire is falling, as it would appear. Not that the empire ever really, got its legs under it. But all of a sudden, we talked a couple weeks ago about Kyrie not getting the long deal. And at that point, it was like, you know what? Look, he's not going to go anywhere else. His best chance is here. Our best chance with him, he'll be back. And nothing moved on that. And then the draft approached, and it's like, look, they're not close on a deal. What if Kyrie leaves? And then KD started thinking, hey, yeah, what if Kyrie leaves? Do I leave? And now every team with a cell phone is calling the Nets about, look, here's our Godfather offer on KD. If Kyrie leaves, we want to be first in line. We're looking at a scenario where it is not impossible to say that your best player next Monday is Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that's the reality, right?
And that's terrifying.
It took Sean Marks and Joe Tsai 3 years to say, you know what, Kyrie, that's enough. We're not going to tolerate your behavior anymore, and we're not going to offer you the max. Apparently, there was a conversation I saw on Twitter that Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets went to Kyrie and they were like, hey, opt into your player option next year, and we want you to prove to us for 1 year that you're still elite, and then we'll give you a max. Did they really think that was a good strategy? Did they think that Kyrie would go for that?
No.
I've said this from the jump. Kyrie Irving hasn't changed with time. He's gotten older. He says things a little bit differently now, but he's still the same person. He's still the same human being. So back in the day when you acquired him and Kevin Durant, you knew the person you were getting behind the basketball player, behind the elite talent that Kyrie Irving is. You knew the person he was. You knew what he believed in. You knew how he acts on and off the court. I'm not saying this from a negative standpoint. I'm saying this more along the lines of Kyrie's biggest issue in his career has been availability. If he were like Iron Man and he played every single game, every single season, regardless of how he felt on certain topics, no one would ever criticize him, ever. But that's not the case. We're talking about a guy who rarely plays a full season of basketball, who before the vaccine mandate, and here's the whole thing with that. People will be like, oh, this last year. Did it stink that Kyrie didn't want to get the vaccine and he couldn't play in the NBA for a while? It did. But I wasn't shocked, and it didn't bother me as much as the year prior when, like, Kyrie missed time and he was at a party.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff. But here's the thing. Again, Sean Marks and Joe Tsai bought into him. They were invested in him. So what bothers me about what's happening now is you can't say after 3 years of not really being able to see this full team, like Kyrie barely played this year. He had no chemistry with his team. You can't not dig your feet in more and say, all right, we'll give in. We'll give this guy who's 30 a 3 or 4 year contract. We'll pay him because we know what his upside is. You can't not say that. You've already bought it for 3 years. And now what you've done, if you screw this up and Kyrie walks and we've seen reports from Shams and a ton of different accounts that the consensus is they're probably going to do a sign and trade and he's going to go somewhere. That's over. It's over if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan.
Yeah.
It's done because KD's asking out. He's not going to want to play with a bunch of role players. And Ben Simmons, He's not going to want that. Kevin Durant's 34 years old. He wants to play on a contender. He wants to win more championships. He's not going to go through what he's gone through the last 3 years if Kyrie isn't here. So it's a tough day to be a Nets fan. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to retweet this from Fireside Nets. That's my Brooklyn Nets account. I want everyone on there to hear what we're talking about because I couldn't go on there today and talk. But Brandon called me up because he's a good friend and he said, "Come on, 2 hours, no traffic. I know you want to talk." So
it's rough. Like I get what it's such a hard place to be in. I totally get what you're saying. Like you've gone too far to prove a point now. Like Kyrie is who he is. You need him more than he needs you. If we're being completely honest, that's where the Nets find themselves. The minute they decide to do a sign and trade, they're going to need to have 17 cell phones because every team in the league is going to take a flyer on Kyrie. But I get it a little bit to where if you have some kind of like team mentality or like if you're trying to create some kind of a culture within the organization, Kyrie's tough on that. Between this year not getting the vax is one thing. Last year, which is a touchy subject, but when all that stuff was going down with like the social injustice and all, he stopped playing for a while. He took like a week or 10 days off to like focus on things big in the basketball. And people thought legitimately that he was going to leave and become an activist full time. Like it's those things where like as soon as anything diverts his attention, he's no longer a full-time basketball player, which is tough. I tend to think if you can get a sign and trade with a team who's willing to give up something of value, maybe you're able to keep KD. But if you let Kyrie walk out the door for draft picks, I'm completely with you. I think I don't think the door even closes behind Kyrie and KD's out there.
Yeah.
Like Bradley Beal is somebody who intrigues me a little bit.
They're not going to do that. I don't think Washington would make that move.
If you're going to lose Kyrie anyway, that's the only guy I think that KD would accept.
We do have an NBA draft. I'm with you. We do have an NBA draft going on right now. I don't know. It's been interesting. I thought Banchero going number 1. I actually like that by the Magic. I think he fits perfectly with what they're trying to do. He's a really good scorer, and I think he can complement Suggs very well. Then Holmgren went to OKC.
Dude, the Magic are building. They get shit on an awful lot in the East because they're the Magic and they're consistently down at the bottom. If you start looking at the very base level of what they're building, there's a lot of untapped potential in Orlando that if they put it together, they're a fun team to watch, I think.
No, I like the Magic a lot. Again, when you're picking, like that's the process right there, right, Brandon? No one relates to that better than you do.
Yeah, no, it really is. Like you get a big basket of talent, and if 2 or 3 of them work out, everybody in the league wants a big 3. You have that. Granted, ours had, a couple bumps along the way. Jahlil Okafor, Nerlens Noel come to mind. Ironically enough, Markelle Fultz kind of found a little resurrection in Orlando as part of the second process. But no, I'm all on board. Unless you're the Warriors and you somehow build a juggernaut team, take 1 year off, get a top pick, and then come right back again, the only way to do it is just by drafting the best guy available. So I'm all in on Orlando.
I like Orlando. I like Banchero a lot. I watched him in college. I just wanted to talk about the draft because I'm on Twitter. I'm just waiting for Nets updates. That's all I'm doing. If it happens on this pod, I'll let everyone know. But yeah,
we're a New York, Philadelphia podcast. Did you see the Knicks move?
Yeah, they keep trading picks. They're creating cap space. And again, I don't think that.
Have you heard the rumor as to who they want to go get?
Brunson, right?
I actually really like it.
I
don't like it for him. I think he's way better in Dallas.
Like, it kind of scares me though, because what if the Knicks can somehow do a sign and trade for Kyrie? Like, it can happen. They had interest in him. There were reports.
You think I know a lot of Knicks fans don't want him there with Brunson playing next to Doncic and how good that looked.
Let me ask you a question, Brandon. Knicks fans right now do not like Kyrie. They haven't liked Kyrie since he chose the Nets over them 3 years ago. How fast do you think they would flip?
No problem.
Kyrie Irving.
None whatsoever. He'd be on a billboard in 24 hours.
Right?
Yeah,
I think New York. I think the Knicks would take him in with open arms. He'd be the most talented Knick since Carmelo.
And even that, I mean, Carmelo went to the Knicks not in the twilight of his career, but he wasn't Melo anymore towards the end.
I don't
know. I think it'd be a tough look. Like, here's the thing: if you're a Knicks fan, it's a tough look to be like stoked about Kyrie, because you can either call yourself the premier basketball team in New York, or you can't. You can't be the team that Kyrie fell to after the Nets didn't work out. If you're the institution that the Knicks are supposed to be, you can't be the sloppy seconds guy. You can't be the one waiting for her to break up with her current boyfriend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation, though. I mean, you could be the guy lurking who's waiting for the breakup to happen and then be the shoulder to cry on. You could be that guy.
And with all due respect, and I follow the Nets now as part of this podcast. That was always supposed to be the Nets. In the New York basketball scheme, the Knicks were never supposed to be the guy waiting around for his shot. They were supposed to be the biggest show in town. So you either are that or you're not that anymore, and they got to pick one of the two lanes.
You want to know something crazy? Kevin Durant's recording a podcast that's like coming out tomorrow night. You think him and his boy Eddie Gonzalez are going to talk about this stuff?
I think it's going to be extremely cryptic. Yes, but I don't think they're going to come out and talk like you and I are. I think they're going to be like,
Brandon,
I've been seeing some moves and stuff.
Brandon, look at me. Look at me. I am not taking this well, okay? I never drink Bud Light casually.
I didn't even know you had Bud Light in the house.
I got a 30 when these reports came out. And it's just been here. And you know what? I have some red wine for after the beer because I don't give a fuck tonight.
You're creating one heck of a concoction over there, buddy.
Shout out to Sideline
Sports. Going to get moved, or you're going to be in a world of hurt, or both.
Sideline Sports, shout them out. They're our sponsor.
They've sponsored this 20-minute therapy session we're about to embark on.
Yeah, this is a tough day for me. I said it from the jump. I'm not happy today.
What's interesting about it is we might be cannibalizing on each other in the very same podcast, because the Sixers have been linked to the situation very closely. If KD were to, if things were to go nuclear and KD were to want out, everybody in Philadelphia is already planning the Kevin Durant welcome home party. He's a part owner of the union. That's all I'm saying. He's got ties.
I heard the same thing about Boston.
Oh my God. Okay, so interesting question posed to you. Obviously, both rivals in the division. You have ties to both cities. Which one would make you more distraught?
You really think after KD and Harden broke up, he's just going to want to play with Harden again? I don't see that.
I don't either, but I also have never understood a move KD made. So I don't know what to think. I also think Embiid's intensity cancels out Harden's lack of intensity. And KD and Embiid are documented very good friends.
Can I tell you something?
What's up?
So I don't think there's any weight to this, but I have a few sources that, have friends in that area, the Nets media area. I'm not going to say anybody. This is an anonymous source. Mm-hmm. They think it's all smoke.
For what? To see what the markets are for these guys?
Negotiating tactics. They think it's all smoke. I don't know the reason. I wasn't given a reason. I was just given that.
I don't get the negotiation tactics. I mean, now all you've done is make these two guys that felt really secure in their positions no longer feel that way. That's horrible negotiating.
So, you just heard me basically freak out for the last, 15 minutes maybe? In the back of my head, it's a little hope. But and again, I started
to believe that. I get that. All I'm saying is, from a team that's already not great with handling these situations, that would be an all-time Nets blunder. Is let's take our two franchise cornerstones and put them on ice.
No, if they somehow come back and they play in a Nets uniform, I will be astonished, but I'm holding out hope it somehow happens. I don't know. We'll see.
I think it's still extremely possible. It's going to take a Godfather offer to pry KD out of it. I mean, it'll be the biggest trade in the history
Well,
of the
bro, it
NBA.
wouldn't. But you keep talking about KD. That's not the first domino to fall. It'd be Kyrie.
No, but Kyrie's a tragedy. KD is the dream is dead, in my opinion.
Oh, if Kyrie's gone, KD's gone. So I know you follow Nets Twitter, but I'll give you a little bit of info here. When Shams Charania tweets, he's tweeting on behalf of like Kyrie's camp and KD's camp. When Woj tweets, he's tweeting on behalf of Sean Marks and Joe Tsai. So you brought that up. What did you say? There was like a report that Woj put out being like, it's not totally accurate that Kevin Durant's going to ask for a trade if Kyrie Irving's traded. And Shams Charania is like, yeah, KD's been like watching the situation very closely. And like, like Shams is speaking from those guys' camp. So did you know that?
My whole thing is like, it didn't have to be like this. Like KD could have sat back on draft night with a glass of wine. He shouldn't have to be monitoring situations.
Oh,
there shouldn't be a situation.
This is another thing that sucks. You're absolutely right. It shouldn't have come to this. How many players in the league who are free agents who are looking for a new home want to go to an organization this unstable, this out there? It's the day of the draft, and they're I don't know. This can scare a lot of guys,
especially not two guys that like you went all in, like you and I were saying earlier on. Like, I mean, if say you guys had a high draft pick, or say you've got a franchise guy, and Sean Marks goes, "Look, we want to build around you." Steve Nash has the same thing. Why on earth would you believe him? If no one on the court right now is better than Kevin Durant, and he's not even comfortable today. So what makes any other player think they'd be comfortable in Brooklyn?
And I'll tell you another thing with Sean Marks. You're absolutely right. Yeah, there's a draft tonight, right? There are a lot of moves to be made, and you can't tell me. I know Sean Marks is a professional. I know he's a general manager. I know these guys can do multiple things at the same time. That's not what I'm about to say. But you can't tell me that he's got anxiety with this Kyrie situation, with these reports coming out. Like, I get anxiety when I have leftover work at my 9-to-5 office job. This dude is in charge of a multi-billion-dollar basketball team that for the past 3 years was a championship favorite. And you're about to basically give all that up because you don't want to give in to a guy who you originally invested in, and you're done with it. And it bothers me.
You know what I would pay any amount of money to see is I would have loved to have seen the Nets war room board 3 days ago versus today. And I wholeheartedly believe that there is somebody in that draft room drafting for the situation that Kyrie is not there come game one.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So now you're not drafting for need. You're not drafting for the best player. You're drafting for a situation that A, you created, B, that might never happen, but you need to be prepared for anyway. So it's not going to be a successful draft, in my opinion.
You know what would make this absolute, and it doesn't make it worse, but I think like when was the last time the Nets messed up this badly? And I think back to like the Pierce KG trade and all that. This is that on steroids. This is so much worse than that. That was you took an aging Pierce and an aging Kevin Garnett. You put them with a Joe Johnson and a Darren Williams you thought were in their prime. You gave it a go. You got smacked by one of the best trios in the history of the game in Bosh, Wade, and LeBron. And that was that. And that put a kibosh on that entire team, and everyone fell off. And it stuck with you for a few years, but eventually they got over it. You do the D'Lo thing. You do the Karis LeVert, Jared Allen team. You build this culture, and then you get KD and Kyrie, and for 3 years, you just blow it.
Yeah.
However you want to look at it, Game 7 against Milwaukee, 4-game sweep against the Celtics this year. They got swept, obviously, the Nets. You blew it.
Yeah. And you got to figure, I mean, with that, it was like they went for lightning in a bottle. Like everybody knew we got one ring, maybe. Like this one season needs to go right. When you guys built this team, it wasn't supposed to be one ring was the bare minimum. This was supposed to be, an East dynasty similar to that of, LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love in Cleveland. This was supposed to be the next big three. and to walk away with it with no titles and potentially, blow it up, self-inflictedly. I'm trying to think back to another situation, another team that melted down this horribly, and I'm having a rough time thinking of one.
Lakers, Nash, Dwight, and Kobe, but Nash was in the peak at not the peak.
Nash was
towards the end. He was washed. Dwight just stunk. But can I tell you the weird thing about this? I don't think that when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant played, they were bad.
No.
They were really good. That's what bothers me about this whole situation. Kyrie Irving is still a top 10 scorer when he's on the court. And if you give that guy a season and you just support him, and we don't have to worry about another vaccine mandate entire thing, and yeah, you'll get your bumps and stuff down the road, and maybe he'll miss a game here and there, but you've already gone 3 years with this guy. And guess what? He came back and he tried. I'll give him credit. He had a 60-point game against, I think it was the Pistons or some team. He had a 50-point game against another team. He had a bad playoff series. I get it. It happens. They were in they were in every game, but I think he played pretty well. One game when he was giving the finger to the Boston crowd, he played well. He played bad for the other three. But it's one bad series. What this guy's capable of when he's on the court. So that's the thing that bums me out, is it's not like these guys came to Brooklyn and disappointed. They just weren't able to be on the court together long enough for Sean Marks to be convinced. And every Nets fan is convinced that they're it. Keep him. Except Sean Marks isn't.
I think what a lot of it is the roster around them not coming through. And for whatever the reason, Sean Marks dying on the hill that the two stars didn't get it done. I don't know where that comes from or what it is, but I mean, just looking at the team, Seth Curry cooled off tremendously. Patty Mills ran out of gas. You didn't have Joe Harris. Everybody around those two kind of imploded, and and they decided to place the weight of that blame on those two guys.
Are you forgetting about the guy that we traded to you for a superstar who didn't play, and those other two guys, Drummond and Curry? I mean, James Harden was a part of this Nets team. He was gone after the first half of the season. Now,
for a guy who didn't suit up, which was a gamble that Sean Marks knew he was taking.
But that's the issue with me. If you're Sean Marks and you had a roster that had James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving less than a year and a half ago, and you get into this season and you somehow lose all three of those guys and you're left with Ben Simmons, I don't think you should have a job.
No, that's got to be a fireable offense.
I don't think you're allowed to rebuild after that. That's not fair to us. No. The people who worship's a bad word. Follow this team religiously.
Yeah.
Okay. And have been through so many lows. You can't tell me a fan base in the NBA after the J. Kidd years who's gone through it worse than the Nets. We have been mediocre to awful for the majority of my entire adulthood. So I'm sorry. And this is what everyone doesn't get, right? The Boston fans and the Philly fans. The Knicks fans kind of get it.
What's the last time we won anything?
I mean, you guys have had a very competitive basketball team for the past 5 years.
We haven't won a title since the 80s.
Yeah, but if you could be a Nets fan or a Philly fan and you're totally biased, you're totally unbiased for the past 5 years, I think I would choose Philly. You guys have had more success.
Over the past, I'll tell you what, I'd choose Philly, but not for that same reason. I'd choose Philly because we're the only show in our own city. Sharing a city with the Knicks would bother me.
Brooklyn and Manhattan are two different places there, pal.
I'm very well aware, but when you think of New York basketball and you're not a basketball guy, it's not the Nets yet.
That's fair. I'm sorry. I got off track. Where were we on this?
I don't know, but I mean, the next point I was going to bring up is just looking at that post-apocalyptic world where they leave. I mean, you're left with Ben Simmons. Yeah, we get that. Andre Drummond's out the door. Seth Curry's out the door. I mean, that you're in a full-blown balls to the wall rebuild. It's not an 8 seed, 7 seed rebuild. It is to the studs.
Yeah.
Because I think Curry has an option, and Drummond's already pretty much said he's, I'll see you later. He's going to go chase the money, which he's going to get it.
You don't have a lot. You don't have a lot, and no matter what you try to trade and get back for Kyrie Irving, it's going to include future picks. And guess what? His value's not that high. So I don't think you are going to get some crazy, ridiculous deal for Kyrie, which sucks. And with Kevin Durant, okay, fine. You give up one of the best players in basketball history to get. I don't care. It's just, yeah, no, you're not allowed to keep your job after this, Sean Marks. I'm sorry. If you blow this. Now, what's bothering me is Kevin Durant's tweeting 52 seconds ago. Kevin Durant just wrote, "It's a wings league, .. I
mean, I think that's it. Like,
bro, here's what drives me nuts. He's got a 4-year contract left, right? He's got 4 years on his contract.
Near the end of this thing.
I know. So, like, for him to just pull an Anthony Davis and be like, "Get me the F out of here.
See you later."
I would not like that.
It'd be rough on him too, because you got to figure what his path through the NBA would look like. It's not a great look for anybody involved. I would argue Sean Marks, whether he blows it completely or not, is already blowing it. I mean, the reputation damage is already done if you want to be a premier guy and come to the Nets.
I'm going to quote tweet Kevin Durant's tweet from a minute ago. I'm going to say, "Hey, Kev, it's me, Fireside Nets. It's just me and you on Twitter in this."
Are you coming
thread
back? Kevin, I'm scared. Come pick me up.
Will you be – damn, this keyboard stinks. Will you be in a Nets uniform next year? Let me know. From one hooper to another. Hashtag ball is life. What do we think?
I mean, you're not going to get an answer back, but whatever helps the coping process, I'm supportive of.
I think I'm going to get him with the hashtag.
I don't.
Hey, Philadelphia is trading the number 23 pick.
Thank God.
To Memphis. You guys are getting back DeAnthony Melton.
I like that. I didn't want to pick at 23. There was nobody at 23 I really wanted. I don't mind that.
He's a nice player, bro. He kind of reminds me of like a Lou Williams, because when he came off the bench, he can get really hot. But he's young, bro. What is he, like 26, 27? Let me see.
I think that was the point of the move, which tells me we're no longer going to be in the sweepstakes. We're not going after Eric Gordon now, because that's the same role.
Anthony Melton is 24 years old, so he's young. He's a nice player, though, man. He was buried in that depth chart behind Morant and Bane, but he can play.
That's a lot more than I expected to get from the 23 pick. When I saw the pick started moving, everybody was getting future picks in cash. I thought we were up a creek. We didn't include Matisse, at least yet, which I thought was stupid for a salary dump if we wanted to include Matisse. I mean, I'm pretty happy. I really did want Eric Gordon. I thought that would have been a really nice fit. But youth-wise, Melton makes more sense.
There you go. I'm going to take a look at the draft. We're just going to go over the big names quick. Number 5, Jaden Ivey went to the Pistons. The Knicks just keep trading their picks away to create cap space. We talked about that. AJ Griffin from Duke to the Hawks at 16. And that's all we have so far as play. Oh, Christian Braun. I remember him. He was a shooter. He goes to Denver at 21. Not a bad pick for them. That's really it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll track the rest of the way. But we'll see.
Oh man. All right, I gotta have this glass of wine before we end the pod. What else is going on, Brandon?
You're gonna have to slug it. We got 30 seconds here, and that's assuming that the sideline sports guys don't get paid for the ads this week.
Here we go. Sideline Sports. This one's to you.
Sorry about your ad space. We'll do better next time.